young people who are either in the DACA program or eligible to be in DACA, that we are not going to take away their legal status, and we're not going to sit back and allow anybody to deport. He understands that when we talk about communications and information, that the internet is the technology of the future, and we are going to fight against anybody who tries to end net neutrality. And Pete made the point during his remarks, which is the key point, is that on issue after issue, whether it is healthcare, where the vast majority of the American people believe that healthcare should be a right, whether it is tax reform, where the vast majority of the American people do not believe that billionaires need more tax breaks, or whether the issue is guns, where the vast majority of the American people believe we need sensible gun safety reform. Congress responds to the wealthy and the powerful and the special interests, not to the needs of the American people. Now you go out in Vermont, and we are a rural state. We've got a whole lot of gun owners. We've got a whole lot of hunters. Same thing here in Iowa, same thing all over America. And you ask people whether or not people should be able to buy guns without undergoing a background check, people will say that is nuts. And they say that in overwhelming numbers. We need to end the gun show loophole. You ask people if it makes sense that somebody can be on a list keeping them from flying in an airplane because they're on a terrorist watch list, can't fly in a plane, but they go out and buy a gun. Anybody think that makes sense? No. And then you ask people whether we should end the so-called straw man provision, which means you can legally go into a gun shop, but then sell those weapons to criminals and people who should not have it. People say overwhelmingly we should end that as well. And more people are also saying, as Peter said, and I have said, as we see the tragedy in Portland, as we saw the disaster in Las Vegas, is that assault weapons are meant to kill human beings. They are not meant for hunting. And that in a civilized society, in a society that is concerned about its children, that is concerned about ordinary people, we have got to ban assault weapons designed to kill human beings. The point that I'm making here, and there are a lot of other things that we can do. It's a very difficult issue. The gun issue is very difficult. There are hundreds of millions of guns in this country. There are 5 million assault weapons that are out there already. And what is scary is that walking the streets of America today are thousands of people who may be suicidal, who may be homicidal. And what we have also got to do is to make sure that those people have access to the mental health treatment they need. But on issue after issue, whether it is immigration, where over 80% of the American people believe we should provide legal status to the DACA people, whether it is tax reform, whether it is health care, whether it is guns, on issue after issue, you got the American people saying one thing, and you got Congress doing the other thing.
So wrong.
So what this campaign is about, what the political revolution is about, is demanding that the Congress represent the American people, working people, ordinary people, and not just wealthy campaign contributors and the billionaire class that today has so much influence over the economic and political life of this country. So what began here in Iowa has got to continue and has got to accelerate. What your job here, it seems to me, all over this country, is for people to stand up, to fight back, and to create the kind of nation that we know we can be. And that begins right here with electing Pete D'Alessandro to the United States Congress. Thank you, everyone.
Believe that we should make it tougher for those that are struggling with mental illness to be able to purchase a gun. And yet, we have not even seen a serious discussion about this issue in the United States Congress. They don't even discuss it, let alone get to the point where we can advocate for these things.
How about a ban on assault rifles?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But let's get back to the reason here. Why we're not having this discussion. The reason we are not having a discussion where 80% or more people support these things, including a ban on assault rifles. The reason that we are not having this discussion is because the NRA is playing in a rigged system in which they can buy congressmen like David Young, and even though 80% of the people want to talk about these issues and want to solve these issues, this is a campaign finance reform issue. We need to reform the system we have right now. And I will be advocating every day for that to happen. I believe it is time for this nation. This nation is as rich as we are. As much as we've done for people here and throughout the world, to join, as my friend Bernie Sanders says, those nations that we've historically called our allies, our friends. And we need to codify into law a very simple but powerful truth. Healthcare is not a privilege. Healthcare is a birthright. I believe that is a Medicare for all system. I will fight for that every day in the United States Congress. If we give me generation of seniors that are living in dignity because this country and this party had the will and the boldness to make it happen. We can make it happen for the rest of our citizens. I believe that with all of my heart. Incidentally, the Iowa primary is on the right at the 50th anniversary of when we lost Robert Kennedy. And Robert Kennedy used to say that the future might be beyond our sight, but it's not beyond our grasp. And that we have an obligation to grab it and to mold it to our will. I believe with all of my heart that if we stand for these things, not just here in Iowa, if we stand for these things throughout this country, a generation from now, they will be meeting in rooms like this, and they will say, that is the time that the Democratic Party found its soul again. That is the time that the Democratic Party heeded the words of Robert Kennedy. And instead of just trying to win elections, they attempted to win the future. And because they attempted to win the future, they started winning elections again. I believe working together, shoulder to shoulder, we can make the will of the people the law of this land. Thank you very much. In May of 2015, and I just want to tell this story because I think it's so important about the movement that so many of you were a part of and why it happened. In May of 2015, a senator from Vermont who was thinking about running for president called me to find out about Iowa and how Iowa works. and what it would take to win Iowa. And because you have to do that, because if you're going to be a serious candidate for President of the United States, you're going to have to go through Iowa, and we all know that. So on my first call with Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, I've been doing this for 25 years. Two things happened that I had never had a person who didn't know me ask me before. First question he asked was, Pete, do you understand my politics? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And then the second question wasn't about, well, how do we organize? How do I win? How does this thing work? The second question, and this is the important question that made all the difference, and is why we're still here today in this movement. The second question was, are you comfortable with them? I could have been David Axelrod or James Carville, but if I wasn't comfortable with what the movement was supposed to be, it wouldn't have worked. And Bernie Sanders knew that. And Bernie Sanders wasn't going to accept anything less at that point, even though he was 55 or 50 points down in the polls. That is the reason that this movement continued. And for the next 16 months, not just in Iowa, I had the unbelievable experience to be part of a campaign and a movement that was both joyful and purposeful at the same time. Not just in Iowa, in 6 other states where we brought the message to. Winning states and winning places that they told us we couldn't even compete in because of people like you. Some of you, exactly you, but people all over this country just like you. And as we did that, I knew that standing shoulder to shoulder with so many of you, that this movement was led by Bernie Sanders, but it was powered by people like you throughout this country. And so it is such an honor. It is such an honor for me to introduce to you the man who I really believe embodies that idea that RFK was talking about grabbing the future and being willing to do it. The junior senator from Vermont, another old boss, my hero, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you so much, Des Moines, for your efforts to elect Pete D'Alessandro as your next United States Congressman. And a few minutes ago, I saw this young woman, Kirsten, wearing that t-shirt. And I asked her to come up, because that t-shirt tells it all. That t-shirt tells us that we are in the process in Iowa, in Illinois, in Vermont, all over this country of transforming American politics, of ending government by the rich and for the rich, to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I am here today because Pete D'Alessandro is in the middle of that transformational struggle. And I want to tell you that the political revolution is sweeping this country, winning victory after victory after victory. And I want to thank Pete and all of the people in Iowa who worked for our campaign here, and the people of Iowa who supported our ideas for helping to lead that political revolution. To Iowa, we were, 40, 50 points behind, and we ended up just losing by a hair. And that's because of the work that so many of you and Pete did. But here is the most important point about what Iowa is about. We came into Iowa with a set of ideas that at the time seemed very, very radical. And all over this country, people were saying, oh, those ideas are too radical, you gotta go more mainstream. People in Iowa are not gonna accept those ideas. Well, the people of Iowa did. And we went to New Hampshire, we won by 20 points, and we ended up winning 23 states throughout the country. All of that started right here in Iowa. And what started in Iowa was the idea that when we talked about making certain that if in America you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty, because we should have a national minimum wage of $15 an hour. Oh my, that was a radical idea. Because the federal minimum wage is $7.25, and we wanted to more than double it. But you know what has happened since? And we don't want to take all credit for great people all over the country working on this. But as you know, in state after state, community after community, my own state of Vermont, the legislature just voted for a $15 an hour minimum wage. Like a radical idea until we brought it to the people, and the people said, no, it's not so radical, it makes sense. Right now, all across this country, there are states and communities that are saying, as Pete has said, that in a competitive global economy, if our young people are going to get decent paying jobs, we have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Radical idea a couple of years ago. Nobody was talking about it. Well, right now there are states and communities doing just that. Thank you, Iowa, for helping to make that happen. Here in Iowa, we talked about a broken criminal justice system that has more people in jail in America than any other country on earth. We spend $80 billion a year at the state, local, and federal level locking people up. And we talked about the need to end the war on drugs, which has failed so badly. That we were not going to arrest people, sometimes jail people, but destroy people's lives for the crime, among other things, of smoking marijuana. And have you noticed what's been going on in this country in the last couple of years? State after state, decriminalizing marijuana or legalizing marijuana. During this campaign here in Iowa, we came before the people of this state and we said there is something fundamentally wrong when in the United States we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right, not a right. And the truth is that at that time, there were very few people who were talking about the need for us to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. But we took that idea to the people of Iowa and they said, you know what? Kind of makes sense that health care should be a right, not a privilege. Now what you're seeing all across the country is more and more candidates coming on board the idea that Medicare for all is the most cost-effective, intelligent way to guarantee health care to all Americans. And I thank Pete Alessandro for being part of that effort. When we began the campaign, when we came here to Iowa, the general thought was that to run for office, the only way you could be successful, the only way you could raise the money that you need was to go to wealthy people and go to super PACs and get down on your hands and knees and say to the rich people, tell me what you want, give me money, and I'll represent you in the Congress. We changed that. Progressives understand that the political future is not with super PACs, it's not catering to the billionaire class, it is asking working people for $10 or $20. That's the way we're going to fund campaigns. And Pete Alessandro understands that when we talk about campaign finance, not only you get your money from individual contributions, from small contributions. More importantly, we need fundamental campaign finance reform in this country, which means overturning that disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And moving toward the public funding of elections. I hold the very radical idea that in America it should not be billionaires buying elections, but one person, one vote deciding who our Congress and our representatives are. So my point about all that is to say that we have an enormous amount of work to be done, but that the ideas that we brought forth, not only in terms of issue after issue, but of making the point that we need ordinary people, working people, young people, to understand that the future belongs to them and that they must get involved in the political process. Seeing that all across the country. We saw that a few months ago in Virginia. I loved it. In Virginia, a lot of candidates ran for what they call the House of Delegates, the state legislature there, and a Republican leader on election night said, this is unbelievable. We were losing to candidates we never even heard of. In other words, young people and working people, for the first time, were getting involved, they were running, and they were winning. They were women. They were gay. They were black. People from all parts of our society. And if anything, what the political revolution means is don't sit aside and think that the other person is so smart that they deserve to be in Congress, they deserve to be president, they deserve to be in the state legislature. Break through that psychological wall. Trust me, I work in the United States Senate. And if some of these guys could sit there, everybody in this room can be on the school board or state legislature. One of the listen, one of the impediments that we have is that for many of us who have not come from wealthy families, working class families, it's a little bit hard when you begin. Hey, am I smart enough? You know, my dad was not a big shot. Can I do it? And I want everybody in the room to understand that if you have a heart with compassion, if you're willing to work hard, yeah, you can do it. So I would hope that people here not only get heavily involved in Pete's campaign, you think about running for school board, think about running for city council, think about running for legislature, think about running for anything you want. The future depends upon millions of people getting involved, and I beg of you, please get involved. Why you need to be involved, and here is the reason why we need Pete D'Alessandro. Why we need Pete D'Alessandro in the United States Congress. And that is, we are living in a very unusual political moment in American history. We have a president who is perhaps the least qualified president in American history. Someone who has little knowledge or in fact interest in public policy. Now I am more than aware that Trump won here in Iowa. That is not a great secret. No. And let's just talk about it. I believe that the vast majority of Trump supporters are not racists, are not sexists, not homophobes, they're not xenophobes. I believe that the reason, not here, just here in Iowa, but all over this country, that so many people voted for Trump is that they are hurting. They're hurting economically, and they were looking around, and Trump was saying a lot of things that appealed to them. Trump said, I, Donald Trump, I'm going to take on the establishment. I, Donald Trump, I'm going to provide health care to all. I'm going to take on the drug companies and lower the cost for prescription drugs. I, Donald Trump, I'm going to stop your job going abroad. We're going to get them to reinvest in America. Well, it turned out that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He lied to the people of this country during the campaign, and he has been lying virtually every day since. When Trump told the American people that he was going to provide health care to everybody, that sounded pretty good. It turns out that he ended up supporting legislation that would have thrown over 30 million Americans off of the health insurance that they currently have. Now, I think that if the people of Iowa and people all over this country knew that that was his plan, if Trump had the guts to campaign by saying, I'm going to throw tens of millions of people off the health care that they already have, I doubt very much that Trump would have won Iowa or many other states. All of you will remember Trump getting up there. He said, I'm a different type of Republican. I'm not Paul Ryan, literally, that's what he said. And he said, I am not going to cut Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security. Not me, I'm not going to do it. I want everybody in Iowa to know that he lied to you about that as well. I'm the ranking member of the Budget Committee. He brought a budget which would cut Medicaid by $1 trillion over 10 years. $1 trillion. And in Iowa and all over the country, we are concerned about the opioid epidemic. Well, a lot of people get their treatment for opioid addiction through Medicaid. People go to nursing homes on Medicaid. Children get their health care on Medicaid. He said he wouldn't cut it. He cut it, proposed to cut it by $1 trillion. He said he wouldn't cut Medicare. His budget includes over $500 billion in cuts over a 10-year period for Medicaid. He said he wouldn't cut Social Security. His budget includes billions of dollars in cuts to Social Security disability benefits. In other words, he told the people of Iowa one thing, and then he did something very, very different. Trump campaigned and he said, you know, I want tax reform that is going to benefit working people, not the rich. Well, guess what? His tax bill at the end of 10 years provides 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. He lied on that too. Some of you may have noticed just the other day, Bill Gates, one of the richest people in America, Gates came forward and he said, I am a multi-billionaire. I don't need a tax break. I need to pay more in taxes. Bill Gates is right. So my point is that Trump told the American people one thing, and he is doing the very opposite. In fact, what he has done is adopted the economic positions of the Koch brothers, which means massive tax breaks to the rich and large corporations, and at the same time, terrible, terrible cuts in healthcare, education, nutrition, environmental protection, all of the programs that middle class and lower income people depend upon. Now, my deep concern about Trump and why we need people like Pete in the Congress is not just his horrific economic agenda to benefit the rich. It goes deeper than that. Every president in American history has understood that one of your jobs, one of your main jobs, is to bring the American people together. We're one nation. And what Trump has quite intentionally done for cheap political gain is tried to divide us up in an unprecedented way. Divide us up by the color of our skin, by the country that we came from, by our gender, by our sexual orientation, by our religion. Divide us up. And I say to Mr. Trump, this country has struggled forever with discrimination. And as a result of the work of incredibly brave people, women who stood up and said, no, we're not going to be second-class citizens. African Americans who stood up and said, we are going to end racism. The gay community that demanded to be treated with equality. We have struggled and struggled against all forms of bigotry and discrimination. And I say to you, President Trump, we are not going backwards, we are going forwards. Pete is running for Congress not just to oppose Trump's reactionary and divisive agenda. He's running for much more than that. He's running to stand with the working class and the middle class in this country, people today in Iowa and Vermont and all over this country who are working longer hours for lower wages, who are scared to death about the future of their children. And Pete understands that we must have, if this country is going to succeed, a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. Understands that there is something fundamentally wrong with our economy when you have 3 of the wealthiest people in this country who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. And that there's something wrong when more and more income goes to the people on top rather than to the working families of this country. So Pete and I are going to work together to deal with the great issue of income and wealth inequality in America. And when Donald Trump and his friends talk talk about cutting Social Security. Pete knows that here in Iowa and in Vermont, and I don't know how they do it, but you got elderly people and people with disabilities who are trying to get by on $12,000, $13,000 a year. Can you imagine people trying to survive on $12,000, $14,000 a year Social Security? And then you have Trump and the billionaire class saying, we need more tax breaks for Bill Gates, but we're going to have to cut Social Security. What Pete knows is, no, we're not going to cut Social Security, we're going to expand Social Security. Knows that one of the great moral issues of our time deals with immigration and the need to protect the 1.8 million young people who are